Hi grade 8, so we're moving on to topic 4, which is the multiplication of fractions. Now do yourself a favor and do hit pause every single time you need to copy down the notes, especially with this picture in the first example, because I know this is probably revision for us, but we're probably quite rusty, and this particular first example with the picture basically tries to explain to us what multiplying fraction actually means in real life. So let's look at example 1. What does it mean to say a half of 2/5? Well, let's first of all look at what does 2/5 mean. Now 2/5 means you would take a whole and you would divide it into 5 parts, and you would then choose 2 of those 5 parts. So that's what 2/5 practically means. Now it says, what is a half of 2/5, which is what I've written down at the bottom here. Now a half of 2/5 literally means divide everything into 2 pieces. Now as I've divided into 2 pieces, I now can see that there are no longer 5 pieces in the whole, there are now 10 pieces. Why? Because every single one of these 5 pieces got divided into 2 parts. So there's 5 or 2 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 2. So that's where the 10 comes from. Now if you want half of this 2/5, you would literally be choosing half of my grey blocks, which is 2 of the 10 blocks. So it's actually 2 out of 10. Now, don't forget, we always have to simplify our answer. So if I want to simplify this fraction, I need to divide the top and the bottom by the same thing. And I divide top and bottom by 2, and I get 1/5. Now, we don't want to have to draw a picture every single time we're trying to figure out multiplication of fractions. So what did we actually do here? What we actually did here is we multiplied the tops together and multiplied the bottoms together. So let's just have a look at the note here, and again I would hit pause and make very sure that I copy down this note. When we multiply fractions, the most important thing in this note is we do not need a common denominator. It's very common for people to try and find common denominators in every single question. So don't forget that common denominators are only needed for addition and subtraction of fractions. So I don't need a common denominator. All I need to do here is multiply my tops and multiply my bottoms, and then simplify our answer if need be. Now there are different ways to multiply fractions. This way, I always call this top times top, bottom times bottom. There is the second way, which is cross-cancelling. So as we work in example 2, I'm going to show you both methods. Cross-cancelling is very useful for big numbers. So let's have a look at some examples. So example 2, first question, simplify without a calculator. Now this is the most important thing. Of course you could just pick up your calculator and work this out, but we're trying to develop a set of skills, so in grades 9 to 12, when you're working with algebra in fractions, where your calculator can't help you, you've got the skills to do it. So let's look at the first question, 4 times 3/7. Now this is a question which is often done really badly, even by children in older grades, because what people tend to do is they say, great, I need to multiply the 4 by 3 and get 12, and then I need to multiply the 4 by 7 and get 28. So they multiply everything by 4. Now don't forget, if you've multiplied the top and the bottom by the same thing, you actually haven't done anything, because you've effectively multiplied by 1. So if you go and simplify 12 over 28 to its simplest form, guess what? You go straight back to 3/7, which means you've done nothing. So really, really important, don't multiply the top and the bottom by 4. You have to ask yourself, what is 4 as a fraction? And 4 as a fraction is 4/1. So everything, if you're multiplying, everything has to be written as a fraction. So now what we do is top times top, which is 4 times 3, which is 12. Bottom times bottom, which is 1 times 7, which is 7. Now I would probably just use my calculator to cheat, but I'd just check, does 12/7 simplify? And I don't think it does, because 7 is a prime number, and 7 doesn't go into 12. Now you could write that as 1 5/7, but to be honest, we really don't bother in high school. There's nothing wrong with an improper fraction. So what have we learned so far? Our method so far that we've used is top times top over bottom times bottom, and then simplify if we can. So let's look at B. Now in question B, I'm going to show us 2 methods. So the first method is, let's do top times top, bottom times bottom. So 2 times 1 is 2. 5 times 8 is 40. So what method did I do there? Top times top divided by bottom times bottom. Now, unfortunately, I tend to forget to simplify, and so very importantly, you must just check on your calculator or check in your head, can you divide the top and bottom by the same number? And I can. I can divide the top by 2, so 2 divided by 2 is 1, and I can divide the bottom by 2, which is 20. So just don't forget to simplify. So often the top times top and bottom times bottom method requires you to simplify. Now, what is the other method? The other method is the cross-cancelling method. Now, this is a very useful method, especially when your numbers get quite big. You've just got to be quite careful as to how you write it out because it can get quite messy. Now, what is the cross-cancelling method? The cross-cancelling method is about simplifying first and then doing top times top and bottom times bottom. So this method is literally just swapping those steps around. So how it works is you can cancel anything on the top with something on the bottom. So I'm just going to write myself a note here. What this method is I'm going to simplify first. Therefore, what I mean is simplify anything on top with anything on the bottom. You can't simplify something on top with something on top. So you must simplify anything on top with something on the bottom. And this is basically called cross-cancelling. Now I'm running out of space here, so what I might do is now kind of just pop down here. So what this method involves is me saying to myself, right, is there anything on the top which can be simplified as something on the bottom? So by that I mean, can I divide something at the top by a number and divide something at the bottom by the same number, which is exactly how I simplified that. So I'm going to say 2 goes into itself once, 2 goes into 8 4 times. Now that's why it's called cross-cancelling, because you're crossing out a number. But basically what I'm saying is I'm saying 2 divided by 2 is 1 and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So I'm dividing something on the top and something on the bottom by the same number, which is exactly what I did there. So I'm just simplifying first. Now the moment I've simplified, I'm now going to do top times top, bottom times bottom. So now I go 1 times 1, which is 1, 5 times 4, which is 20. So now this is top times top, bottom times bottom. So this idea of top times top and bottom times bottom, you need that regardless of whether you cross-cancel. Because ultimately, even if you cross-cancel, you have to multiply the fractions together. So just to summarize, basically you're doing top times top, bottom times bottom, and then simplifying, or you're doing the exact opposite. Now I must say I prefer the cross-cancelling version if my numbers are big, because if I don't know what 12 times 27 is, it might be quite helpful to do some simplifying first. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter, and sometimes I cheat on my calculator for multiplying big numbers. So let's have a look at a couple of examples, and we're going to do both methods. So let me draw myself a line down the middle here. Let's do my first method. My first method is top times top. So 3 times 21, I at least know that. That is 63. Divided by, now I have no idea what 14 times 23 is. So I could think about it, but I would just pick up my calculator and go 322. Now this is precisely an example of where it might be useful to rather cross-cancel first, because I don't know what number goes into 63 and 322, so I would literally just put it in my calculator, and I would cheat on my calculator because my calculator tells me it's 9 over 46. Now I wouldn't have been able to do that, and so if I don't have a calculator handy, this is a rather annoying method in a question like this. What has my calculator actually done? It's divided the top by 7 and the bottom by 7. But I had no idea that 322 was divisible by 7. So isn't the ideal method. So what does my cross-cancelling method look like? Well, my cross-cancelling method looks like this. Can I do any simplifying before I multiply? Now by that I mean, can you divide something on the top and something on the bottom by the same thing? Now when you do this, you've got to be quite neat, because otherwise it becomes quite a mission for you to see what you actually should be multiplying. So if I look at 3, does 3 go into any of the numbers on the bottom? Well, 3 doesn't go into 14, and it doesn't go into 23 because 23 is primed. So that doesn't help. So if I look at 21, 21 has something in common with 14, because I can divide them both by 7. So I'm dividing the top and the bottom by the number 7. So I divide 14 by 7 and I get 2, and I divide 21 by 7 and I get 3. Now there's nothing more I can cross cancel, because often you can continue cross cancelling. I can't cross cancel anything more. I know I see a 3 and a 3, but they're both on top. So remember, you can only cross cancel with something on the top and something on the bottom. So now I have 3 times 3, which is 9, and 2 times 23, which is 46. So this is much easier. I didn't need a calculator there. So let me just write down my steps here. So this method is where you just multiply the tops together, multiply the bottoms together, and then half the time you use your calculator to simplify for you, because you don't know how it simplifies. So simplify. The second method is do the simplification first. So simplify by cross cancelling, and by that I mean dividing something on the top and something on the bottom by the same number, and then I would do top times top and bottom times bottom. Now I should also check that this answer isn't simplifiable, because sometimes you don't cross cancel everything you could and your answer can still simplify. So just be a little bit careful. Okay, let's try the next question. First of all, the next question, I'm going to rewrite the question quickly, because I'm going to rewrite 4 as having a fraction, so having a denominator of 1, because otherwise we tend to make mistakes. And again, I'm going to divide my page in half, because maybe there will be multiple ways to do this. So let's do our first method first. Top times top times top. So 1 times 2 is 2, times 4 is 8, 3 times 5 is 15, times 1 is 15. Now I check on my calculator, or I think to myself, does something go into 8 and into 15? And the answer is no, which means it's simplified. Now that means you cannot possibly be able to cross cancel, because if 8 over 15 doesn't simplify, it means you couldn't have simplified first. So let's just check. Our tops are 1 and 2 and 4, and our bottoms are 3 and 5. There's nothing that goes into anything on the top and at the bottom. So I was forced into one way of doing it. Okay, let's try question E. Question E adds another dynamic into the mix, because there is a mixed number. Now, I probably have said this 100 times. We do not like mixed numbers. So I need to change from a mixed number to an improper fraction. We never, in any circumstances, like to use mixed numbers. So change from a mixed number to an improper fraction. Then I can multiply. So let's quickly remember how we convert. So if I have 3 cakes, each divided into 2 pieces, that's 3 sets of 2, which is 6, plus an extra 1, which is 7. So the question is actually 7 over 2 times 5 over 14. So I'm going to do this question 2 ways if I can. Let's look at the first way. The first way is top times top, so 7 times 5 is 35, over bottom times bottom, which is 28. Now simplify, so is there anything goes into 35 and 28? Well, 7 goes into both, or I could cheat on my calculator, and that's 5 over 4, I think. Great. Now, that was fairly easy because the numbers are small. What would be a different option? Well, if I write down the question again, I would ask myself, is there something on the top which can be divided by a number and the bottom can be divided by the same number? And it is, because 7 divided by 7 is 1, and 14 divided by 7 is 2. So now that I've cross-cancelled, top times top is 5, bottom times bottom is 4, and just to check, I can't simplify that. So that's absolutely fine. So either one of those methods is fine, and I often chop and change method depending on what I feel the question needs. Right, let's look at our next one. Now the next one is, I put this in because it has a negative sign. which is not to bother me, because when we multiply signs, then our numbers, and then our variables. So I'm going to do this in two methods, but both these methods, the sign is not a problem at all. This is a negative times, and 1/7 must be a positive because it has no sign there. So a negative times a positive is a negative. So now I just have to worry about the fractions. So 3 times 1, top times top, 5 times 7, bottom times bottom, 35. Now 3 is a prime number, so if 3 doesn't go into 35 exactly, then this can't simplify. Now I know that 3 doesn't go into 5 because of a fairly nifty trick. So let me show you this nifty trick. If we look at a number like 35, if you add the digits together, you get 8. Now if that answer in adding the digits, that 8, if that's not divisible by 3, then this number is not divisible by 3, which is pretty cool. So let me show you another example. So 123. If you don't know if 123 is divisible by 3, just say 1 plus 2 plus 3, and you get 6. Now 6 is divisible by 3, which means 123 is divisible by 3. Pretty nifty. So in this particular example, 3 over 35 doesn't simplify, which means there's no option for cross-cancelling. Now I can pretty much see there's no option because 3 does not go into 5, and 3 does not go into 7. Now 1 goes into everything, but you wouldn't actually get any simpler, and so there was no option to cross-cancel. Okay, let's try two last questions, G and H. Okay, first one, yeah, I do not like this mixed number, so my first problem is to deal with that mixed number and change it to an improper fraction. It does have a negative, but that's not going to worry me, it's just the negative stays. Right, 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so it's negative 3 over 2, times negative, now I should probably put this in a bracket because we don't like multiplications and negatives together. Now, not to worry about these signs because I know my rules of signs. Negative times negative is a positive, which of course I don't have to write. Now I'm going to divide my page in two again because I think I can do it two ways. Now in this case, top times top is 3, bottom times bottom is 12. Can that simplify? Well, yes, because 3 does go into 12. So 3 divided by itself is 1, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So our second way to do it would be to say negative 3 over 2 times negative 1/6. Of course, the negative times the negative is a positive, so I don't have to worry about that. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And now top times top, 1. Bottom times bottom, 4. And I get exactly the same answer. Okay, last question to do. I'm also going to divide it in half in case I can do this two ways. And my first thing here is I'm going to write that 2, as I have done before, as 2 over 1. In this case, negative 2 over 1, because I like to view everything as a fraction. Okay, now let's do our signs quickly because they're annoying. So negative times a positive times a negative. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive, so that's nice. 1 times 3 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 5 times 4 is 20, 20 times 1 is still 20. Can I simplify that? Well, 6 can be divided by 2, which is 3, and 20 can be divided by 2, which is 10. So that's one of the ways to do it. Another way to do it would have seen negative 1/5 times 3/4 times negative 2 over 1. And again, I would have done the positive immediately because a negative times a positive times a negative is a positive. Now what cross-cancelling can I do here? 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So now top times top times top. 1 times 3 times 1 is 3. Notice I didn't take into account this negative now because I've already dealt with the signs, so I can pretty much ignore them. And 5 times 2 is 10. So hopefully this is quite a lot of revision for you. Just to quickly summarize, we don't like mixed numbers, so change them to improper fractions. Don't let the negative signs freak you out. Just multiply the signs together first and then ignore them from then onwards. And there's two methods. Either you do top times top and bottom times bottom, and then you simplify, or you can simplify by doing cross-cancelling first and then do top times top and bottom times bottom. Great. Well done, everyone. Good job.